Hi, everybody. I am Steve Harper. I am a certified creativity coach, writer, actor, producer, and I'm dedicated to helping you write your stuff, especially if you're an actor, if you're somebody who's just coming to the world of writing. I am here to help you make the most out of your dynamic ideas and all of your impulses in terms of writing, because I think the world is a much better place, much better, a much more dynamic, a much more interesting place when we're all expressing ourselves in the way that we're called to express ourselves. So that's what I'm here to do, and my website is yourcreativelife.com. If you're not familiar with that, go and check it out, and there are a bunch of articles and interesting things about how to promote and expand and improve your work as a writer, which is what I'm all about. So today, we are talking about television, specifically TV writing and how to write your TV script. And you know, this is a preview to a Los Angeles-based class that I'm going to do this coming weekend on Saturday, and it's a really dynamic 4-hour experience where we'll talk all about television and how television is made, and how you can create your own work and devise your own television pilot and story. And that's what it's all about. And so it's really about an opportunity to give you some tools and some opportunities, some vision, some perspective in order to show up on the page in a dynamic, fun, and exhilarating way so that you can get your story out of your head and out of your heart and onto the page. So if you're interested in doing that, in creating your own TV piece, this is the right place, and this preview class, and perhaps the workshop on Saturday if you're in Los Angeles, is for you. So today, we're going to talk about the juiciest elements. What are the juiciest elements of writing your TV story? And you know, I'm boiling it down to the juiciest elements because in the workshop on Saturday, we're going to do 4 hours of exercises and brainstorming and taking a look at video pieces and showing you outline styles and dialogue and talk about character. And there are all these things we're going to get into in depth. And so as I was looking toward this particular experience, this particular sort of, you know, half-hour free experience, I was thinking, well, what can I bring to this experience to you guys, stuff that you can apply right now and work on right now in order to make your TV writing better. So I thought of 5 really juicy things, and we're going to talk about those 5 really juicy things in the next half hour. The other thing I should say to you too is once we've talked about our 5 really juicy things, there will be time for questions at the end. And so if you have questions, you can put them in the chat feature here on Google Hangout. You can also always email me at coachsteve@yourcreativelife.com and bring your questions to the forefront in that way. So here are the 5 juicy things that we're going to cover today. First is a solid idea that's connected to your soul. A solid idea that's connected to your soul. Second is a strong sense of character, and we'll talk about character and what character is and how character operates in the world of television. We're going to talk a little bit about knowledge of where you're going. And if you saw a recent video of mine, that's one of the key things to think about in terms of stepping up, in terms of creating a TV idea, a TV character, knowing where you're going. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about a great way of creating scenes, creating good scenes and dynamic and interesting scenes. And finally, we'll talk about an awareness of structure. Awareness of structure. So we're going to cover all those things in the next 26 minutes or so, and still have time for questions. So let's get started. The first thing is this solid idea. So now you've probably been watching television, as I have, and you watch a ton of stuff, maybe comedy, drama, network stuff, cable stuff, and you might be aware of what's going well out there, what the hit shows are and what are not the hit shows, the non-hit shows, if you will. And you know, you might figure from that there might be a formula that you can boil down in order to write the pilot script or the script that you think is going to wow the world. And you might want to latch on to those ideas, you may think, in order to do something that's dynamic and interesting. Well, I say completely toss that aside. I think that there are a lot of people out there in the industry at large, and I think we all know this, that see something interesting and then say, let's imitate that. Let's do more of that. You know, more of this, whatever it is, more of this explosive stuff, or more of this CIA stuff, or more of this, you know, people of color stuff, or whatever it is. And I really think that's not the key to creating really dynamic material. The key to creating really dynamic material is you and your unique perspective on the world, to look inside at your soul, your heart, your well-being, your particular MO and purpose on the planet. What's obsessing you? What's really interesting to you? To take that piece and put that on the page, that makes a script that's dynamic and unique and interesting rather than following the crowd. And so that's really what I encourage people to do, is the more connected to you and your heart and your soul and your spirit and your energy, the better. So what are you obsessed with? What can't you get out of your head? What are you sitting up at night thinking about? What galls you, or what do you love to celebrate? Those are the things, I think, to lean into and find your way to in order to create a really dynamic TV script. So the closer to the core of your being, the better, in my book. Now, I always start, you know, I give you these things because they're what I do. So I always start with what I'm obsessed by. And I think that, you know, what I look at is the opportunity to have that piece, that map, that sense of direction sort of in my soul, so that I can look ahead and say, this is what I'm really interested in. Now, what does that get me on the page in terms of being a writer? A, it gets me a deep connection to what I'm writing, so and to what I want to say before I've even written a word, because I'm obsessed with it and I've been thinking about it and have this dialogue going in my head. And B, it gives me a place to find the truth in what my subject matter is, a place to find the truth in what my subject matter is. So in other words, I could be writing and I could get to a point where I could say, you know what, this particular piece, I like what I'm doing, but it doesn't really zero in. And so then I can go back to my original impulse, because I have an original impulse, and say, what is it that I'm obsessed by? What is it that's so special or interesting or dynamic or purposeful to me in this idea? So it gives me those things as I look to create something dynamic and dramatic. So, for example, if I'm obsessed with having a really good romantic relationship, for example, I could take that obsession and turn it immediately into a TV idea, right? So, so suddenly I can create fictional lovers, or would-be lovers, or ex-lovers, whatever, and I can still put them anywhere. I could put them on the moon. I could put them in a house. I could put them in the past or the future. And what I know about that idea is that no matter what the trappings are, no matter what the icing of that cake looks like, I know what I'm going for in terms of the soul and the energy directly inside this piece. I know what I want to happen and what the dialogue is before I even get there. Not the dialogue, but the essence of it is before I even get there. And that really shores up what I'm up to. So I want you to take a moment right now, a couple of moments, and close your eyes and think about what it is that obsesses you. What really lights you up? What can't you let go of? Think about that for just a moment. And whatever it is that's going through your mind now, or that has just gone through your mind, or that will go through your mind, because you can continue this exercise, I want you to jot that down. And you may have then 3 to 5 different things that obsess you, that sort of take you on some sort of fanciful journey. And those are the things that I say write about. That's your core wellspring of ideas, is that space that you're really dynamically interested in. So congratulations on having a connection to those things. And I believe you can create all sorts of ideas from that. So next, our next thing, number 2 on the list, is a strong sense of character. And you know, your main character is, of course, going to be the absolute center of your series. Every series really ultimately is about one person. Even if you have a big ensemble, there's always somebody who's out front. There's always somebody who's front and center. There's always that person. And so it's important to know who that main character is for you. But we know that it's really important for you to learn as much about your main character as humanly possible. So you want to do some backstory stuff. You want to brainstorm, all of that. But in the world of television, the most important thing about character is action. We understand and define character by how people behave in certain circumstances, right? So it's all about what your main character does, however unique they are, It's all about what he or she does. The more active, the more inciting moments, the more things they do to push the boulder of the story ahead, to push back against things, to change things, to come up with ideas, to use their superpower, whatever it is, that's character. So we may brainstorm all we want about history and backstory, but then if we have a character who just sits there and doesn't really say much and doesn't move the story ahead and doesn't seem dynamic or interesting, we become much less interested as an audience. So think about right now, take a moment and think about who your favorite TV characters are or have been. Just take a moment. And I imagine that in that moment, you'll begin to find that every one of those TV characters, you love them because of the things they do. You love them because of the action that they take, because of the ways that they step into the world and make changes, or try things, or hope for things, or push against stuff. And begin to think about that and begin to watch that as you watch television. It's all about what the characters do that defines who characters are in the world of TV. Great. Now, number 3 is the idea of knowing where you're going. So this is number 3 in our list of 5. And the first 2, as we talked about, were the soul, heart, visceral connection to your idea. And number 2 was character, strong sense of character. So this is number 3, which is knowing where you're going. And just like if you were about to leave the house and go on some trip, you would probably either have a map or you'd have a GPS with you, right? And so in order to do that, in order to know where you're going, you have to A, know where you're going, and B, have a map as to how you're going to get there. Now that map is going to be an outline, and the outline deals with structure, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But right now we're talking about how to go to get to where we're going. And in the world of television, the more we know about what the end game is, we're going to know a couple of things based on that. One of those things that we're going to know is everything that needs to be there in our pilot episode, everything that needs to be there in the beginning of the story in order to set up where we're going at the end. So, you know, if you're watching a TV show, you know, you really have to know, you really don't have to know very much because you're watching it. But if you're creating a TV show, you know, you're going to enjoy the ride more if there are hints and stuff that's going on that you're sort of, whoa, what's that about? And how's that going to resolve? And where's that coming from? And how's this going to happen with that? And, you know, those are the things as an audience that we love to step into. And that having some answers there, having some answers that you know as a writer at the core of your being as you step into that world, as you create that material, that's going to make it that much more fun and that much more specific for you as you put things in place to move ahead on the journey. So, you know, it's really important to do that. And you might say to yourself and to me, you might be, well, wait a minute, I'm only writing 1 episode. But the truth of the matter is, if you're creating material that other people in the industry are going to read, everyone in the industry is looking at every pilot they read as that thing, right? As a piece that is leading to a larger story, because that's what television does. So when people take a look at your material, if your material isn't pointing toward this future thing that you know about, and if you know, for example, if you don't know about it, then you're going to be that much more challenged and that much more handicapped by stepping into a space that is not as dynamic and as rich as it might be. So, all right. So that's the third thing about knowing where you're going, another really important thing. So now once you have your character and you're going to get some sense now of, you've got this thing you're obsessed with, you have your character, you know where you're going, you know, you're going to go into a number of different things that we're not going to be able to talk about today. You're going to talk about and look at a log line, which basically describes what the episode is with the conflict included, right? And you're going to begin to brainstorm scenes, and you're going to begin to outline. And we won't talk about those things here because those are more complicated than we can do in 30 minutes. But I do want to give you some good nuggets, and here are a couple of others. On the other side of outlining, it's very important to know how to write a good scene. To know how to write a good scene. So what does that mean, you might say to me? Okay, Steve, what does that mean? Well, here's a quick formula for that. It means a couple of different things. And there are a number of writing teachers over the years who've talked about it in very different ways. You might see Robert McKee's book on my shelf over here. Robert McKee is the great screenwriting teacher. He talks about it one way. And I know there are other people who talk about it other ways. This is a little sort of Aristotle piece that is sort of interpreted from Aristotle, who of course we know is one of the fathers of drama. But the quick modern formula to interpret Aristotle is action, conflict, reversal. Action, conflict, reversal. And you might say, what is that? How is that? It sounds really formulaic. Do I really need that? And not every scene has this action, conflict, reversal, but I think in some ways, some of the juicier and juiciest scenes that we'll see in drama do have this. So how does this work? Action. Action is something is happening as the scene begins, right? Conflict is, oh, there's something that plays against that. There's something that comes in and creates tension and obviously drama about like, oh, there's something that might happen. We don't know. There's this tension going on. There's this conflict, right? So that's conflict, action, conflict. And then reversal is the scene flips and turns out a way we didn't expect. The scene flips and turns out a way we didn't expect. Okay, action, conflict, reversal. So, all right, you know what the words mean and I've defined them, but let's see it in action. So here's an example I love to give. And here's the thing too. We know that every story that's worth its salt, we're going to talk about this in a minute, has a beginning, middle, and end. That's a structure piece. And even commercials have that beginning, middle, and end. And even commercials, the best of them, I think, use this action, conflict, reversal piece. So here's an idea that you might see in a commercial. There's a guy driving down the road, right? And he is in this car that he loves, and the sun is out, and he's driving really fast, super fast. He's hitting those curves. It's a sunny day. The wind is hitting his face. He's just loving his life and loving this ride in this car, and we are taking it all in. And suddenly, as he makes a right or a left around a curve, there's a policeman who chases him. And we know, we're like, uh-oh, this doesn't seem good. And the policeman is chasing him on his tail, keeping up with the guy, going faster and faster. They're sort of racing down the way, and then the policeman overtakes him, zips around, cuts the guy's car off. The guy screeches to a halt. The policeman jumps out, comes to his car, and the policeman says, I like that car. Where'd you get it? Right? So the action is the guy's driving down the road, going super fast. The conflict is policeman shows up. There may be trouble. There may be arrest. There may be illegality coming down the pike. And then there's a reversal, because when the policeman catches up to him, it's not to give him a ticket. It's just to ask him about his car. So that's action, conflict, reversal. It's a way to put a very interesting spin on a dramatic situation. And it's a way to take a scene and make it really dynamic. So again, not every scene has this, but if you can put this in as many scenes as humanly possible, it's a great building block, great, very simple building block to make the scenes just crackle and the thing be much more interesting and dynamic. Action, conflict, reversal. So that's one way to create a great scene. Now, in addition to that, there is number 5, and number 5 on our list is awareness of structure. So let's recap, right? So the first one was an idea that sticks to the soul, that comes from inside, that is really dynamic and beautiful to you. The second is character, what character is. We know that character is action, right? The third thing we talked about is what was the third thing we talked about? Oh, knowing where you're going, right? There we go. Is knowing where you're going. So knowing what the end is, or knowing what the where is this scene going? Where is this show going? Where is this series going? The more you can know, the more dynamic you can make the piece you're going to make. And then fourth, as we said, is this scene piece, how to make a really good scene. Action, conflict, reversal, right? And the last piece that we're going to talk about today is structure. You have to have an awareness of structure. I'm going to get a drink of water. And the awareness of structure piece is really that we know every story, even children know this, every story worth its salt has a beginning, middle, and an end. Every story worth its salt. Beginning, middle, end, right? And what does that mean? Now, in the great book Screenplay by Sid Field, one of my favorites, and this is a book about screenwriting that I swear by and teach by and everything, Sid Field talks about this structure thing, this beginning, middle, and end piece. And he sort of lays it out in terms of, there's a beginning, obviously, there's the middle where the conflict is, and then there's the end that sends us toward a resolution. And he talks about the little hinges in between that gets us from the beginning to the middle and the middle to the end. And he calls those plot points. And plot points, essentially, to Sid, are the moments when the drama turns, right? From the beginning to the middle to the end. So that's something to embrace and grasp. Every story has this kind of structure, so it's important to recognize it and understand how to create it, how to create these plot points that take us from these different sections of our drama to these other sections, right? But then, once you're writing for television, you're going to take that beginning, middle, and end structure and lay it on top of some sort of television structure. So, for example, I used to write for Covert Affairs, Covert Affairs on the USA Network, which had a teaser and 5 acts. And when we say acts in the world of TV, we mean the things before the commercial break, right? So the teaser happens and then there's a commercial. And then act 1 happens and then there's a commercial, and so on, right? So you're gonna take this teaser and 5 acts and you're gonna lay this beginning, middle, and end over the teaser and 5 acts. And generally, what we would do on Covert Affairs is, the sense would be that our plot point 1, our first thing that's gonna head us into this huge, big conflict, is gonna happen at the end of Act 1. So we get teaser, Act 1, big conflict happens, right? Conflict stretches out over Acts 2, Acts 3, Act 4. At the end of Act 4, big moment that's gonna send us potentially to a resolution, and then we have Act 5 to sort of live out and move through that resolution, right? So we're taking our structure, beginning, middle, and end, and we're laying it over this sort of 5 teaser and 5 act, 6 section structure, right? A little confusing, but obviously a chance to take that drama piece, the structure piece that Syd Field talks about, and spread it out over a television landscape where we're going to have commercials. Now, you might be writing a show like an HBO kind of show that doesn't have commercials, and then your structure piece would not be encumbered by commercials. But in either case, there's a sense and an importance of embracing structure and figuring out how to move from that beginning section through the middle to the end in order to have us maximize and feel the drama that shows up, that really takes place in the middle, that big conflict. And if you don't really get there, if you sort of get there in drips and drabs, you can find, as you continue to watch things on TV and go to plays, that pieces of drama that don't really define where we're going in terms of where the conflict shows up can be kind of boring. It's a real challenging space. And so that's why, one of the reasons why it's really important to have this sense of structure. So that's a lot to cover in 30 minutes or less. And again, we hit these important ideas about TV that you can take home and use right now. 1 is a solid idea that's connected to your soul. Next is a strong sense of character. 3rd is a knowledge of where you're going. 4th is a way to create scenes in a dynamic, interesting manner. And last is an awareness of structure. Whew, that's a lot. And hopefully those are things that you can use today to make your writing better. Any questions out there? And while you're thinking about your questions, I actually want to remind you that this is a preview class to a workshop we're having this coming Saturday. It's called Your TV Writing Life, and it's going to be super dynamic, 4 hours of everything that we talked about today and much more in terms of hands-on exercises, the opportunity to do writing on the spot, to talk about the way writers' rooms work, to talk about the way outlines work in the real world of TV, and to take a look at real television. We're actually going to watch some TV and then break it down in terms of structure and what we see and what happens and what the main character does and where's the action and how do we know that person is the main character and are they moving things along and all of that stuff. It's so fascinating and really essential in order to write a really dynamic and powerful and interesting TV pilot. So I have a question that I thought you might have, so I'm going to throw it in here, and that is, how does it work in a TV writer's room? So briefly, when you're in the brainstorming phase of creating a story, in the writer's room that I was in, that's where all of the participants are chiming in with ideas about it could be this or it could be that. And at some point, once you get a certain number of ideas and the showrunner, the people running the show, decide, okay, we're going to do this one and this one, then not only do they decide that, but they'll hand it over, they'll hand the script over to a particular writer or writing team who will then guide the discussion after that. And ultimately, once that discussion is done, that writing team will take everything that's been brainstormed, and by then brainstormed in a structure of this is going to happen in the teaser, and this is going to happen in Act 1 and Act 2, and blah, blah, blah. And that writing team or writer is going to take that and put that into an outline, a narrative outline, and then eventually into a script that is about 50 pages, 50 or 55 pages long. And so that's the collaborative piece with the captains of the ship, the showrunners at the top, making the key decisions and then sending that writer off to do what that writer does. One other question I thought you might have is, do I really need that structure thing? And the answer is yes. And again, I encourage you to sort of step out into the world and notice when structure is working for you and when it's not. Marsha Norman, who's teacher and Pulitzer Prize winner and teacher of mine, former teacher of mine at Juilliard, said structure for her is all about knowing when the audience can leave. So if I'm watching a show in the world of conflict, you know, there's like the beginning, the middle where the conflict is, and the end. When the conflict shows up, I get a sense of when I can go home, right? If the big question is, who murdered so-and-so? Then I know that the show will be over when we find out who murdered so-and-so, right? That's essentially the way it works. And so structure gives us that clue. Oh, we're here now. As soon as we figure out this, the show's over. As soon as we figure out this, we can go home, right? And every child, every 3-year-old to 10-year-old, we're indoctrinated into a sense of structure. So we really know, we really feel whether it's working or whether it's not working. And I encourage you to really cling to that and adopt it. There's also some great wisdom in this book. This is William Rabkin's book, Writing the Pilot. It's a fantastic book. But actually, I'm giving away to people who sign up for this workshop. Well, actually, the next 4 people who sign up for this workshop will get one of these. And so sign up. You can go to yourcreativelife.com to the events page and find out all about our workshop, Your TV Writing Life. Again, 4 hours this coming Saturday. It's going to be dynamic, fun, interesting. I taught it last year, and there was so much wonderful response. We had fun. We learned a lot. We had a great exchange of ideas, and I talked about my experiences in the writing room, my experiences working on my own material. You know, this year I created a web series, and I'm working on developing a new TV idea with a producer, and I'm learning so much more that I'm really excited to give away. So, so find your way to yourcreativelife.com. Take a look at all of the information about the workshop and the other articles and things that are there, which I think you'll also enjoy. And you know, there's so much more to cover about helping you to create the most dynamic and interesting TV pilot that you can. So that's what I'm here to help you do. That's what Your Creative Life is all about. And I support you in both keeping in touch with me. You can always ask me questions and get in touch by emailing me at coachsteve@yourcreativelife.com. I'm always happy to both get questions, comments, thoughts, all of that stuff about writing of any kind in terms of the TV world or playwriting or expressing yourself in a way that you haven't before. Because again, I feel like the world is a better place when we're all coming from that, that thing, whatever it is that drives us to say what we need to say in order to make the world more dynamic and more interesting. And I'm all about helping people do that. So that's about it. Happy creating to you in your writing life and any other creative life that you pursue. And I really support you in doing what you can to get your story out in the world. So take a look at yourcreativelife.com and happy creating.